Hi, Peter Boolkah here, and welcome to today's edition of the Transition Guy. Now, joining me today in the studio is Olly Wood, who happens to be founder of the Body Reset. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a different episode because we're going to be focusing on health. Olly, welcome. What is the Body Reset?
Hey, Peter. Lovely to be on. Body Reset for us is very much a rebuilding of the body when the body feels like it's no longer playing ball. So for us, we designed this plan around rather than just slogging yourself with another workout or trying to starve yourself through the day, which we see a lot of business owners do. They either, as we said before, they're either eating crap throughout the day and not performing at a high level, or they start fasting and start under eating, which ends up really being a malnourished component. So for us, we look at that fueling aspect. We look at how we can get that body back on your side in a slightly more intelligent way so you can do what you enjoy.
Right, you're talking about under eating and fasting. I mean, there's been a lot of talk in the press, and you've got Michael Mosley in the UK talking about the Fast 800, the intermittent fasting. You're not a big fan of intermittent fasting?
I am in the right amounts. I'm a big fan of Mr. or Dr. Mosley through his gut health diet book. I thought that was a really well-researched and well-read book. His Fast 800 is very much leaning into the fast track. How do I lose weight for 4 weeks rather than really create a sustainable approach moving forward? Now, because we specifically work with business owners and CEOs, the focus around energy, brain function, and performance overall needs to be considered. And if you're underperforming, you've got brain fog coming through, hormonal and even hormonal shifts are coming through, that's going to get to a point where your health is not really where you want it to be. And if you're already tired, already run down, your health isn't where it needs to be, the last thing you need to do is feel like you're running on fumes. All right. So I'm a fan of fasting through an approach he uses, certainly in his other book, the Healthy Gut Diet, I believe it is, on more of a cyclical approach of, say, weekly or monthly. I'm not a fan of when it comes in every day, and most business owners use that as an excuse to simply not eat and not put themselves first.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think there are a lot of business owners out there unwittingly fast.
Yeah, it's not by design.
It's not by design. And probably where people would maybe say, okay, I'm on a 16-8 or whatever, business owners tend to go in there, they'll eat some junk before they get into the office. They'll then get consumed throughout the day. They probably won't eat for maybe 8 to 10 hours. They'll then go home, be too tired to cook, and then chuck something into the micro.
Yeah, this space is really fascinating. I could talk about this for ages, but to simplify the focus, I think it comes back down to health is not a binary. You're either healthy or unhealthy. It depends on what type of health you're after. Especially the UK, they're coming out with a lot of research and focus around lifespan, right? But what are we optimizing for? Is it health span? Is it lifespan? Or is it performance span, right? All three of those in what degree are going to be helpful for you? Because if I want to live as long as possible, that's very different than being able to perform as long as possible. Many of us know that getting ready for a marathon is something that in its essence is being healthy, but it's certainly not particularly beneficial for what that looks like from a lifespan standpoint or your knees. So being able to balance that out and work out what your version of health looks like. I know that I am leaning more towards the health span, performance span type of health, as opposed to lifespan. Now, absolutely that's going to improve. I want to live as long as possible, but I only want to live as long as possible in a strong functioning body that I can do what I want every weekend, right? If I feel I'm too weak to be able to do those things, I'm saying no to the mountain bike ride or the squash game. That's not the kind of health that I'm optimizing for.
So you can actually choose the kind of health that you want to optimize for.
Yeah, it's just tweaking towards where that's coming through. And I think certainly the UK research I'm seeing coming out of UK is very lifespan dominant, which means that I don't think it's beneficial towards the recovery, muscle mass, functional component of performance that is coming through. It just depends on what type of health you're looking for. And certainly coming from a personal training background, we saw this consideration coming through a lot is the CrossFit guys would train their clients like CrossFitters. The bodybuilders would train their clients like bodybuilders. The best thing a coach can do is define what your version of health looks like rather than trying to assume what that is for you. So that's always a good conversation to have. And if you're listening to this, really understanding what you're optimizing for should then filter out what type of information you're looking for.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because as I've now hit my 50s, I suppose strength and mobility for me has been really important. Functionality. I don't want to be that 60-year-old looking like Yoda.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that comes through a ton that for me has always been the best predictor of health span is going to be muscle mass, grip strength, and walking speed, right? But if you look at this purely through the lifespan component, muscle mass, if it becomes too high, you're going to notice is actually something they keep quite low. We're fasting, we're having a more of a low protein diet. We don't want a huge amount of metabolic expenditure and therefore additional stress on the body. Whereas from a health or performance span standpoint, staying strong, mobile, maintaining as much muscle as possible as we age is going to be fantastic for that strength and mobility.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd probably fall flat on would be walking speed, because my life is so fast everywhere else. I just like to chill sometimes when I'm walking and enjoy the moment, as opposed to have that as 100-mile-an-hour activity. Why do you think we should be prioritizing gut health? Because you mentioned gut health before, and we're seeing gut health come here, there, and everywhere. I mean, in your opinion, what are the benefits, especially as we start hitting the 40s and 50s plus?
Yeah, gut health is certainly coming through. It's certainly not an uncommon phrase to have heard now. And I think with the supplement industry pushing a new collagen or a new probiotic, it's something you're going to hear more and more of. But as we talked about with Mr. Mosley, and an awareness of the diversity or even just the influence your gut has on your entire body, I think the one thing most people can't ignore is the importance of it. From again, coming through from the lens of that high performance business space of understanding how is this important for this specific market. And that's something I'm going to reference a lot, because especially in the health space, there's so much information out there. Just trying to find out what's accurate is hard enough, right? You've got to sift through the 99% and find the 1%. Where we need to go to from there is actually find what's relevant for your age and stage of life, or for your profession and style of work, right? If you're someone that's pushing the envelope, you're cognitively focused or taxed throughout the day, and then you're trying to get your physical health on that same spot, gut health is certainly one that we anchor through. And to refine what I mean by gut health, it's not taking your probiotic or your kombucha. It's considering how your body's responding to the outside world. So we break this down into 3 key areas, right? One is physical, we look at psychological, and then we look at digestive. At the end of the day, each of those 3 can be a stressor on the body. We need to bring an awareness to which one's hindering and holding you back, all right? So the one that I think goes under the radar quite a lot here is actually the physical. Is, of course, if you're not moving at all, you're not going to be digesting foods as well. You're not going to absorb nutrients well. Increasing exercise is certainly going to help. But if you're on the other end of the extreme, and certainly business owners tend to have this all or nothing attitude, if you're moving into this endurance space, if you're always exercising, that in a very real way is a stressor on the body, right? It's not overtraining, it's under recovery that's the issue. And if there's an absorption issue, or we're under eating and fasting for part of the day, and then trying to make up our calories later in the day, those can all come into some of those physical stresses coming through, right? The one you mentioned before about how busy that day can be, and then the only time you pause is when you slow down your walk. Now we start to look at that psychological stress, looking at how we manage the nervous system so that we're not just in that fight or flight response all day. If there's one thing I would do to improve your digestion and your gut health, would be those 3 to 5 deep breaths before a meal, right? Just check in with yourself. We focus so much on just getting all the things done. You know, I'll get off this podcast, I'm going to feel pretty heightened because I enjoy this stuff. If I don't take the time to go before I go have a meal, my body is just going to have that food sitting in my gut. It's not going to be in a position to actually digest it. And we've all felt that if we've had a workout or we've inhaled a meal before the next work meeting and that food just sits in our gut, right? We've all been there.
Why does it sit?
Slow the body down.
Why does it sit?
So the big change that happens here in a very physical way is if you're in a fight or flight response, right? Slightly stressed, slightly heightened, that's generally what I lean towards. What your body does is it actually pulls a lot of that blood towards your muscles, right? So 80% of your blood actually moves towards your limbs in order to fight or flight, right? If you're in a calm, rest and digest state, that's where that blood can actually be more around the digestive tract and be in an actual capacity to absorb nutrients and allow our body to digest effectively. So in a very real way, that switch of whether you're stressed out or whether you're calm has a very real response on how you digest food.
Right. Is there any, the amount of times you eat in a day, does that affect your gut health?
It can, yeah. I think if you're, the one thing that we push on a lot, certainly again, in this performance or health span space, if you're pushing the envelope, you're trying to get your body back on your side, maybe you're looking to drop a bit of body fat, put a bit of muscle back on, look at that strength component, then looking at prioritizing a level of protein intake for your fuel for the day is certainly something that we lean on quite a bit. And if you're trying to get all of your protein in one meal, that's going to be substantially a lot of food, which if you're having just one massive meal is going to have a pretty detrimental impact on your digestion itself. So I'm a huge fan of bringing that over 3, 4, maybe 5 meals. I don't think we need to go full bodybuilder and go 6, 7, 8, but that ability to look at 3 to 4 meals becomes usually a really nice sweet spot where we've got enough frequency that we can space out those meals. We can remove any grazing of snacks in between, but then we're still giving ourselves an opportunity to have 3 or 4 good pockets of protein in the day in order to fuel that process, improve recovery overall.
Do you think that increases in metabolism?
Yeah, 100%. There's a metabolic impact that you're having on digesting food. If you're looking at if there's one food or one food group you're going to overeat in, it's going to be protein, right? Because it's going to be more metabolically demanding for your body to break down. So it's kind of a fun way to look at it. I'm sure it's an amazing marketing ploy. Like, you eat food, which allows you to burn food, right? Like, your body is going to be more metabolically required there. Now, if you're having sugars and foods that are just straight into the bloodstream, your body's not going to require a lot in order to just pull them into the bloodstream and use them as energy. But if they are a little bit more required to break down, it is more metabolically demanding, and you can certainly burn more body fat. I actually did a test on this in a bit of a bodybuilding space for me, where I was already around sort of 8 or 9% body fat, and I'd kept quite a one style of nutrition moving into a training phase. And what I did is I did a bit of a switch from more of a fat dominant approach to more of a carb dominant approach. And at that point of training, carbohydrate was actually more metabolically demanding on the body, which means at the same caloric intake, the same amount of food, seeing a switch in macronutrients overall, I actually lost about 2 or 3% body fat, right? So that's obviously fine tuning it to the very extreme, but understanding what foods and what amounts will actually change how much you burn.
Okay. I mean, you mentioned body fat there. What would be an ideal body fat percentage? I mean, what should we be aiming for?
One that I tend to use, just got off a call with a bloke looking at the space. He was sitting around 20, 19%. He's like, cool, how low do I go? All right. For men, we tend to look around 15% being a really nice threshold to get under, where you start to get a little bit more detail through your stomach. You're making sure that you're in a point where hormonally things are a little bit more optimal. So testosterone's in a better spot. Estrogen is typically more managed. And then from an insulin sensitivity standpoint or ability to utilize carbohydrates, 15% I really like to use as a nice marker. It can be quite genetic, anywhere between 12 to 15, but 15 is a strong marker. As for females, a little bit higher. We're looking more around that 22%.
Is that age dependent?
There is variations, but in order to keep things simple, I'm going to go around that 15.
So even sort of when you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, you want to be looking at your body fat percentage as one of your markers of health.
I would suggest so. Yeah, it's one of those things that it gives you a true representation of actual body composition rather than just overall weight, right? Because one of the things that I think we worry about is, we need to keep our weight down. And what happens is over time, we just gradually start reducing muscle as we continue to put body fat on, even though we're staying at 75 kilos, 85 kilos, or 105 kilos. If we look at body fat, we're able to get an awareness of, are we actually maintaining a healthy level of body fat, and are we at least maintaining muscle? Because if you keep 15% body fat from when you're 20 to 40, but you notice that your weight goes from 80 to 71, then in a very real way, you now know that you've lost 8 or 9 kilos of muscle. And that's what we need to focus on. So again, it depends on your starting point, depends on your general body type. Are you more inclined to put body fat on, or are you someone that really struggles to put weight on? I certainly find that percentage metric of body fat rather than overall weight is a lot more accurate overall.
Well, I've got some work to do sitting at 20% body fat. I don't think that's exactly great then.
Well, 20 is certainly much better than most people, right? I think when you actually take a very real measurement of body fat, it is confronting initially, but many people will be surprised that they're moving into the 25, 30, 35%, and a lot of business owners are.
Well, I'll be honest with you. There were periods in my time where I was like 28, 29% body fat.
Yeah.
And I wasn't considering myself to be any time unfit. But I suppose there's a lot of studies out there that says that disease lives in body fat. And
certainly toxicity. If you're at 35% body fat, it doesn't matter which way you put it, you can't be healthy because there's a high level of toxicity and inflammation that you just can't get rid of until we reduce some of that body fat.
Do you think reducing body fat can also get rid of some of the diseases we have in our society today, even if you do have them already?
Well, this is where we dive into a conversation versus acute versus chronic disease, right? And I think from a medical system, we've got very good at reducing acute diseases coming through, right? But when we look at the chronic problems that are coming through in society that are really caused from that chronic inflammation in the body, or at least the breakdown of the gut, the breakdown of I guess ultimately the bombardment of toxins that we're now exposed to. That's certainly going to have a huge impact on overall health. Whether the body fat is a chicken or egg scenario, that's kind of discussion to be had, because if there's a highly toxic body, very hard to drop body fat. If we have high body fat, it's also more likely that we have higher toxic load. So it's very much one and the same, knowing that you're high, they both come in to play.
And the reason I'm asking these questions is because there's going to be a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're driven by KPIs, right?
Yes.
And most entrepreneurs will have KPIs around their cash, their revenue figures, their profitability, their retirement. They'll have all these metrics, but one of the metrics that we probably don't talk about, we do talk about, oh, what's your ideal weight? Well, I want to weight this, or I want my waist to be this. But actually, not often do I hear the word body fat spoken about.
Yeah.
I mean, they use that bullshit term BMI, which is absolutely great. But if you've got high muscle mass, BMI is out the window anyway. But actually, body fat probably is the one thing that no matter what your body shape is, body fat's body fat.
Yeah, it's actually funny enough. I'm reading a book called Measure What Matters by John Dewar. Have you heard that before?
No, I haven't. But I shall look it up.
It's a good book, but it's very much a business book. But the conversation that has been quite good from that is talking about OKRs instead of KPIs. And the single difference is obviously KPI becomes a one myopic metric on is this moving forward or is this not. The conversation around OKRs, which I think diving in from the business standpoint, we use a concept called run your body like a business, which is very much find those key targets and look at really elevating over time. With the OKR, ultimately that is what's your overall objective and then what's your key result. All right. Where that's really, really helpful is we see a lot of men come into our world where they're like, okay, I want to run a marathon. And I'm like, cool. So what's the objective? Well, the objective is actually to feel fit, feel strong, feel mobile, and really make sure I can do the things I want to do. And I was like, great, let's keep that in mind, because as we start to increase your running and you're 45, you're going to feel your knees hurt. You're going to feel your hips are tight. You're going to feel that you're no longer enjoying running. So what happens if we transition that to weight training or rowing or something that really allows you to achieve the actual overall objective and then have some key results that become the short-term metrics of the 1,000-meter row or the bodyweight deadlift, that sort of thing, right? So the actual result becomes focused on the objective overall. And I think, especially with the weight example, myopically looking at one measurement, as you know, is silly, because the body composition itself is going to be part of that. But people don't walk around with a number on top of their head of how much they weigh. It's how they feel in their clothes, how they function throughout the day, that truly is that main thing, certainly for a business owner focused on performance.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting you say that? It's one of the things I'm obsessed with is actually body composition.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've got one of those Tanita body sort of scales,
right,
which gives you an approximation of where your muscle mass is, where your body fat is, and all of that. I probably would ask you the question. A lot of people may say, okay, but in order for me to achieve all this stuff, then I'm going to have to train hours a day in the gym and everything, and I don't have the time for that. Is there more of a time-efficient approach people can take to exercise, which isn't going to be overly demanding on time that they perhaps don't have, but believe that they should have?
Yeah, we can go so many different ways on this. I'm going to answer this in two ways. One, there's the third part of the gut health that we didn't mention, right? We talked about physical, we talked about psychological. The third one we didn't talk about was digestive, right? And this is the space that we start every single one of our clients with, because at the end of the day, if that digestive stress is coming through, that's where the inflammation, that's where that sort of sluggishness comes through. And if we try outwork that problem, we're just going to feel more tired. We're going to feel more drained, right? So the first part is, how do we make this more effective? Let's focus on getting the body healthy, like actually functioning first before we start looking at exercise, right? What that looks like is identifying some of those main foods. One of the questions I ask all the time is, what foods do you find you feel bloated or sluggish or gassy on? Most people don't know the answer to that, right? Being able to identify those one or two things that typically, especially as you move into your mid-40s and 50 especially, is there's certain sensitivities that start to become a little bit higher. It's things that used to not be an issue, now become an issue. Milk comes through. Maybe it's some breads. European bread's much better than Kiwi bread, but usually there's some things that come through there that start to become more of an issue, right? If we So that's the first part. Identify the digestive stress first, remove the shit that's causing you to feel bloated, tired, gassy first, and you'll be in so much better a position where your energy feels better, your joints aren't as inflamed or achy in the morning, and you're likely probably breathing a better too.
You're using that word inflammation a lot. Now,
Yes.
a lot of people will just think inflammation is when you injure yourself.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. And this is, thanks for bringing that up, because obviously I talk about this every day. I don't know what's normal and what's like, second level here. Inflammation, when it's acute, meaning in the joint, is obviously inflammation that's caused through an injury, right? When I say inflammation chronically, this is where we're feeling inflamed throughout our body, right? We're feeling that we have higher white blood count cells. Our body's sort of in a survival mode where it's trying to kill off these things coming through. And if we're constantly bombarding our body with foods that are causing that stress, then we're going to be in that chronically inflamed state. We're just not giving our body a break, right? The way you can think about it is kind of like those little bodybuilders, not bodybuilders, bodyguards in our gut wall, trying to keep the bad guys out. Now, if you're constantly bombarding, it's kind of like if you've got 1 out of 100 that you need to keep out, the bodyguards can handle it. If it's every single person is a stampede towards the front gate, pretty hard to stop. All right. So if we address that first, certainly from a digestive component, most people will feel better within 2 to 3 weeks. Now, we can look at this through autoimmune conditions is where this becomes kind of out of hand, and it's not just from food, but certainly from a general population, they can see a huge benefit from starting here.
That's interesting, because I mean, you take most countries now, especially sort of in the developed worlds. I mean, you've got access to so many different variants of cuisines. I mean, you literally got worldwide cuisines. And I suppose when you think about it logically, our bodies were never designed to handle that sort of massive set of variants. Is there any science behind getting tested? Is there any science? Can you get any sort of measurement as to what your body's more predisposed to or not? Or is it just guesswork?
You can, 100%. There's so many tests coming out, and we're certainly moving into an age where everyone is demanding the new genetic test, or the new food intolerance test, or even the organic acids test, and we can go really deep into those. We've done a lot of them before. But one thing I would implore you to lean on first is your awareness that you are not paying attention to, which is, how did I feel on that food? Because the first thing I'll say is, if you're going to do a food intolerance test, do a blood work one. Don't do it off your hair, your nails, whatever else is coming out, because they're largely inaccurate, and you'll get a list of 20 foods that you didn't even know would be an issue, because they're not. If you're going to do one and you find 2 or 3 that come through from a blood work test, that can be a really good test. But just really bring awareness to like a basic food log for 2 weeks. Again, whether it's in business, health, relationships, where you pay attention to something, it gets better, right? So if you're hoofing down food and you're not aware of, I feel kind of sluggish, but I don't really know what I ate in the last 3 hours because I've just kind of been a bit of a blur, that would be a really great place to start. And I think if you start there, you'll save $600-700 on a test, and you'll also bring an awareness to something you can use long-term, because that thing will change. And that gives you a huge amount of awareness on, right, I used to be great on tomatoes, but that's not really working anymore. Or I'm probably just going to switch this out for my milk and my coffee. And everything else is actually sweet. So it's nothing drastic. It doesn't have to be huge. But certainly that comes through from that business owner space is the all or nothing, right? I've decided health is going to be good, so I'm going to now pay for thousands of dollars of tests, change my exercise, change my nutrition, and probably piss off my family in the process, right? How about starting with one thing and just looking at feeling better, sleeping better, and build from there?
I suppose the challenge for a lot of people is just that whole arena of convenience.
Yes.
And a lot of people are saying, well, this convenience food is bad, while others are saying, well, there's good convenience and bad convenience. I suppose it's just working out foods that your body can tolerate.
Totally.
What should you eat?
Convenience, and this is where we could go down a whole different tangent here around delegation. One of the things that business owners usually get quite good at doing is delegating certain components of their company, whether it's something where it's a skill set component, whether it's a time consumption aspect, whether it's simply an hourly rate that they're looking to adjust to. All of those allow you to delegate in a work environment. One of the things that I certainly, I'm always surprised that it's not on the list is what happens if food is an issue for you. If you paid $50, $100 for a part-time chef to come in once a week to cook all of your lunches, would that be worth $100 in order to perform for the whole week? Yes. right? So why is that not part of your delegation list, right? So that could be a convenience. That could be something. I literally had my guy come in Monday. All of my lunches and some dinners are done for the week, and I didn't have to worry about it. I'm not someone that goes off recipes. And like most business owners, where there's so much stimulus that comes through in a day, you don't want to have to think about what fancy new recipe I need for dinner, right? So if you were to delegate one thing and probably make yourself look better in front of your wife or your partner as well, have those meals in the fridge, right? Take that extra stressor off your plate and make health easier.
So that's interesting you say that, because a lot of people probably were brought up with the mindset that something like that would only be for the uber rich.
Yeah, totally. I was the same, and once you realize, like, hang on, if we're having this conversation, if we want to pay someone, to do an accounting, why would it make sense for, if you're trying to keep your hourly rate at whatever, for you to spend 3 hours cooking?
Well, a lot of people have started to adapt that to other parts of their lifestyle, whether it's outsource the gardening, outsource the decorating. I suppose this is just another thing where you get another expert in your life to do something that they're better at doing than you are.
Yeah, and you don't have to take it entirely off your plate. If you enjoy cooking, 100% do that. But it's just a conversation of what in your life is becoming the stressor, and then how can we adjust it to make it more convenient. And if that chef component is not part of that list, for me personally, it's just one that I see come through a lot. It's not knowing what to eat. It's the time to allocate to put it aside. Which, coming back to your original question of how do we make this easier, I do the same thing with exercise, right? Most people struggle to find a way to put exercise in their day because they're looking for 2 hours. One thing we work on with many of our clients is, hey, I want you to find 10 minutes, and you find opportunities everywhere, right? Just walk outside. The hardest part, and you know this, I know this, is part of that hamster wheel is just getting a bum off the seat, peeling your face away from the screen to just stop that mental chatter for 10 minutes, right? And that has a huge amount of benefits for your brain, your ability to wind down the end of the day, all of those digestive capacities we talked about before. It's just that ability to move out of that space.
No, I think that's really a point well made. Now, the third cog, like in your whole body reset, is the psychological.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, to me, with psychological, one of the things that comes out a lot is stress.
Yep.
I mean, I hear stress a lot. What are your go-to stress management techniques that entrepreneurs can use to maintain sort of their mental clarity and focus?
Yeah. So the first question I need to ask is clarifying what the issue is, because there's two camps that people fall into. One is we're burning the candle at both ends. We need to pause a little bit, right? We can look at the breathing. We can look at the yoga. We can look at that ability to wind down a little bit. Those are all fantastic options. Typically, if we look at under fueling, under sleeping, those are usually the two we need to look at, not another bloody cold shower. All right. If we look at those first, we're in a much better position to improve that routine, the non-sexy stuff that gets us ready for tomorrow. We can't be productive if we've got no capacity to start with. If we focus on the simple routine that creates the capacity to keep going long term, that means we don't keep going through the cycle of being good on Monday, absolutely flat on Friday, and then trying to start the routine again. If you actually want to have energy for your weekend, the big question I'm going to tangent this with is, and this always gets the deer in the headlights stare for a lot of business owners, is where are you fitting joy in your week? Right? That ability to look at that space of when your phone goes flat, you charge it, right? Ideally, you do it more often than when it goes dead. For us, we tend to not worry about till Friday. We try frantically catch up in between kids' sports, whatever else is going on, to finally be ready for Monday again and go again. So it's that simple pocket of what are we adding in our day on more of a regular basis. And this is definitely more important towards business owners that feel like because they have other people working for them, they've got all this stuff going, they need to be working harder, they need to be in the office, they need to always be there. And that guilt that comes from, walking out at lunchtime and go and get a massage, right? Or whatever that becomes around the self-care component of simply how I look at it now, which is sharpening the axe before I start swinging, right? Like if I'm flat, I'm tired, I'm going to find ways to procrastinate my day because I just don't have the capacity to continue going. So it's really that conversation of feeling good about that space of being able to wind down. If you burn the candle at both ends, that's the conversation we need to have. The second one, and this is...
Before we move on to the second one, I'm going to ask you a question about sleep then.
Yep.
Because burning the candle at both ends tends to be like a mantra of honor for many entrepreneurs. Look at what I can do. I'm hard. How important is sleep? What impact does sleep have on the body in areas like sort of metabolism, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
What do you reckon we should be aiming for as a minimum in terms of hours of sleep? Because I've heard people, I mean, Elon Musk would say, well, I can survive on 4 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
But
Well, he's
is
not
that
the
like,
walking pinnacle of health, is he? He's a fantastic man. But one thing I would start with is, a conversation or a question I'm always getting is, what percentage of nutritional training should I be focused on, right? And the question is, or the answer would be, if you're not nailing sleep first, it doesn't matter, right? Because if you're getting less than 6 hours sleep a night, your insulin sensitivity halves, right? Your ability to store body fat goes through the roof. So looking at those components, we could go down the list of you're going to be dumber, you're going to be slower, you're not going to recover as well, you're not going to digest food well, you're certainly not going to burn body fat. There's so many things that they're going to reduce if you're not hitting at least that 6 hour threshold of sleep, right? So looking at that through the window of really maintaining at least getting to that point of 7 hours is certainly where I'd start, right? Now, the first part that we look at here is, of course, we can't sleep harder, right? It's something that's relatively unconscious. And looking at the routine to wind down, calm the body down before bed, actually, there's a huge component there that comes down to nutrition. Most people really struggle with it, or at least have a concern and worry about having carbohydrates in their last meal because they think that's where they're going to store body fat. There's certainly, again, relevance towards business owners. Having carbs in the form of your low glycemic potatoes, long grain rice, that sort of thing, can be really, really helpful at calming the nervous system down, which will therefore improve sleep. And if you're someone that's naturally heightened or a bit of a hothead through the day, having some carbohydrates in that last meal can be a really nice way to wind down. So that would be the first place to start. Now, where you wake up in the night can tell us a lot about what's really going on. It could be glucose control, liver congestion. It could even be the oxidative stress. Where in the night you're having issues, a bit beyond today, but certainly something we dive into a little bit around actually identifying the problem you're having and then building from there, rather than it just being like, do you have a cool, dark, quiet room? Like, that's helpful, but if you're always waking up to pee at 2 o'clock, that's something we can address. It might be a liver function thing, and that's where we are able to combine the benefit of the lifestyle design components of habits with the blood work, the real data to find out what's happening with your body.
oh, that's helpful. Okay.
Second part there, but I can stop there.
Well, listen, I mean, we could go on probably for about 4 or 5 hours on this, which will probably be well out the sort of concentration span of most people tuning into today's episode. If people want to hear more about this, what we've discussed, because there is so much we've discussed and so much more to discuss, what's the best course of action they can take?
Yeah, man. The big thing from today is an awareness of getting your body back on your side, not just slogging it in the gym and eating less food. So if you want to get an awareness of doing this in a smarter way that allows you to insert or even just simply tweak and actually save time to actually get your health back in your day, I think an easy place to start with some really clear action steps would just be go to our website, which is bodyreset.online. There's a free 5-day challenge. We separate this male and female because there's obviously some clear hormonal changes that we address differently. And that will allow you over 5 days to simply make these tweaks to look at health a bit differently, get your body back on your side. And if it's dropping body fat, just getting your energy back, I think that'd be a really great place to start.
No, thank you very much. And you know what? It's been a really interesting conversation today, Ollie. I think the best thing is a lot of people spend their time working on the sort of mental side of it. A lot of people may do some physical side of it, but don't necessarily get their body truly healthy. They may do the exercise, but there's been so many more core components that needs to be looked at. Like you look at OKRs, maybe most people have got KPIs for their bodies, but not OKRs, and maybe that's what needs to look at. How you have a complete.
The last thing I would say here is there's no wealth without health, right? Like actually step back and look at what you're building and why you're building it. If you get to the end of that project, that journey, and you're tired, you're run down, your joints don't work, you've got no energy to do anything you want to, and you've got this gut hanging over your jeans, that's probably not going to help so much with that process of actually drawing at the end. So what was worth? Why was it? Why'd you go down that process? So hopefully that just allows you to look at that little balance of all the urgent stuff on your list, and then we look at what's actually important. And that sometimes allows us to step back a little bit.
And a lot of people were there say, well, do you know what? My health has been rubbish for maybe 5 to 10 years. I've got all the things that Ollie's talking about. It's too late for me. Is it ever too late?
No, we had a bloke in his, he was 72, decided it was fine to finally turn things around. And I saw him doing, he actually got himself in a gym for the first time. Again, one of those guys just, I I'd never be in the gym. I'll never be fit, that sort of stuff. And as long as you're willing to have the courage to shift that personality and choose a different story, certainly something we can look at.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, if you enjoyed today's episode, please like it, because we love likes. Share it with other people so that they can benefit from the wisdom of Olly's words, and also subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. If there's anything around the business realm you want to discuss in greater detail, you can always head over to Boolkah.com and get in touch. We're more than happy to help. And remember, failing to learn is learning to fail. Thank you so much, Olly, for being an awesome guest.
Thanks, Peter. I really enjoyed it.